Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, hockey fans. It is a crisp 4 degrees Celsius, 39 degrees Fahrenheit in cloudy little Bridgewater, Nova Scotia today. My name is Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to the Saturday, April 16th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. So we had 4 really excellent games last night. Unfortunately, I missed a good deal of the Detroit-Tampa Bay game because of that silly little thing called work. And today I think I'm going to miss the entirety of the first game that plays today. So that's going to make things difficult and frustrating because hockey. But we're going to talk about last night's games before we tee up tonight's action. And we actually have a couple of news items, some stuff that came out from the games last night, a couple of people talking to the media and things like that. So we're going to deal with all of that in today's episode. But let's get going here, reviewing last night's games. We're going to start with the first game, Detroit in Tampa Bay taking on the Lightning. Of course, the Lightning led that series 1-0. Going into last night, it was Game 2. The Lightning with a big 5-2 victory on home ice. Shots in this game were 32-31 Detroit, so fairly even there, and the opportunities were fairly even. Tampa Bay just did a lot more with what they were given in this game. Second straight, not great game for Jimmy Howard. The Red Wings come out and open this game with fire. They're getting shots. They're getting pressure on net. They're showing grit. They're playing like a team that knows that they're down 1-0 and knows that they're in a life or death situation. There are several key saves that are being made at both ends of the ice in the first period, so both goaltenders starting the game off quite well. Dylan Larkin comes out and shows an aspect to his game that I don't think a ton of people give him credit for, which is his physicality. He's not a huge guy, but he does play a physical game. 3 hits in 20 seconds in this first period, a 20-second span, twice on Hedman, and then drilling Jonathan Drouin. Drouin, for a second game in a row, really getting under the Red Wings' skin. Justin Abdelkader, we talked about him from Game 1, how he was a thorn in the Lightning side. Unfortunately, Abdelkader takes a bit of a dumb penalty here in the first period, takes a slew foot. Kucherov then comes in, hits the post. He had such a great game in Game 1, so a close opportunity there on the power play. Tampa Bay does later eventually connect. 15-17 into the first period, the Lightning on the power play, and of course, who else? Nikita Kucherov with his 3rd goal of these playoffs. Hedman and Johnson with the assists. A slapper from the point there for Kucherov that finds its way home. Tampa Bay is on the board 1-0. We jump ahead last minute of the first period. Tampa Bay with a glorious chance to make it 2-0. Drouin hits the post in the last minute of the first period. What a huge momentum swing that could have been for Tampa Bay. Might have been the dagger in this game, to be perfectly honest. 2-0 with a goal in the last minute. That could have been huge. The Red Wings do have a slight edge in the physical play, kicking off the second period and through the first. Justin Abdelkader just absolutely destroying Nestorov against the board, and physical play leads to offense. Detroit, 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the second period. Dylan Larkin gets the goal. Assists go to Eriksson and Kronwall. Kind of a bank pass there. Eriksson just sort of threw it down the ice, took a big hop off the boards. Dylan Larkin catches up to it and puts it behind Ben Bishop. That ties the game. Dylan Larkin's first career NHL goal, his first goal in the playoffs, and I believe he becomes the 4th youngest player, maybe in Red Wings history, to score a playoff goal or something like that. There was a graphic that they put up on SportsCenter, and I completely whiffed on it, I guess. But we have a tie game here. That's a big goal. Detroit needed that in a big, bad way. And unfortunately, 3 minutes later, they give it right back up. 6 minutes and 46 seconds into the second period, the Lightning go up 2-1. This was a goal from Boyle. Assists go to Drouin and Coburn. Really just a transition play. Tampa Bay turns it around, heads the other way. Drouin with a nice drop pass to Boyle. Boyle snaps it home behind Howard. Howard didn't look great on that play, but Boyle gets the goal. Tampa Bay goes up 2-1. And after they go up 2-1, they really picked up the tempo there. They were playing faster. They were playing stronger. Sheahan and Drouin kind of take offsetting penalties here later on in the second period. And that would unfortunately become a trend for the Lightning here at the end of the second and heading into the third period. Tampa Bay, in fact, pick up 4 straight penalties in this game. 3 straight, 2 to Hedman and 1 to Boyle to end the second period. And then they pick up another penalty in the early third. And the 4th time was the charm. Detroit finally makes them pay for it. 4 minutes and 27 seconds into the third period, Detroit on the power play. Richards gets the goal, a wrist shot from the point. Assists go to Green and Tatar. Detroit has tied this game. Another big momentum swing. We got a really fun end to this game, we hope. And 2 minutes later, they give it right back one more time. 6 minutes and 32 seconds into the third period, Tampa Bay goes ahead for good. Tyler Johnson gets on the board, his first of the playoffs. Killorn picks up the assist on that one. A nice little feed from behind the net, kind of into the crease area, and Johnson just taps it home. Again, didn't look great on that play, Jimmy Howard, so I gotta wonder if maybe the Wings are still sticking with him in Game 3, or if Game 3 they turn to Peter Mrazek hoping for a spark. I would imagine they probably go to Mrazek. And as this game wears on, the one thing that I was really noticing about Detroit looked physically and mentally tired, especially after that 3-2 goal. It started looking like boys playing with old men, to be perfectly honest. I mean, Detroit just looked slow. They just looked tired. They almost looked lazy. They kind of hung on there for a little bit, but then Tampa Bay just put the foot down on the pedal and took this game over completely. 14:48 into the third period. Tampa Bay now with a 2-goal lead. Tyler Johnson, again, his second of the game. Assists go to Kucherov and Garrison. Bit of a broken play. Johnson gets the goal. Kucherov is just on fire in these playoffs. Unbelievable. I hope you took him in your fantasy team. I did not. So Johnson gives the Bolts a 2-goal lead. The Wings pull Jimmy Howard with 3 minutes and 30 seconds left, and even 6 on 5. Even 6 on 5. Detroit is not getting any push whatsoever. And of course, you know where we're going with this. 17-16 into the third period. The Lightning ice it with an empty netter. It's Killorn. It's his second of the playoffs. Assists go to Carl and Johnson. A nice little bank shot that puts it out of reach. 5-2 Tampa Bay. And then at the end of this game, we have another line brawl. Again, these teams do not like each other. They've seen too much of each other in the playoffs the last few years. Abdelkader right there in the middle of it. And Abdelkader bloodies up Blunden on Tampa Bay. It looked like the end of a UFC fight, a very one-sided UFC fight. So Abdelkader bloodied up Blunden. I can't imagine there's going to be any kind of supplemental discipline or anything like that, but this is going to be a very heated and very unfriendly series heading back to Detroit, especially with the hometown Red Wings now down 2-0. Tampa Bay wins 5-2. Our second game of the night saw the quick turnaround here between the Islanders and Panthers, Game 2 of that series. The Islanders, of course, won Game 1. Florida comes back on home ice to get the split. Florida wins this game 3-1. The Islanders, however, heavily outshooting the Panthers 42-31. Again, the Panthers, like Detroit, they open up the game with physicality, with tight play. The Panthers recording the first 4 hits of this game, so they really want to come out and send a message. And as I've mentioned before, physicality leads to offense. 4 minutes and 32 seconds into the first period, Florida gets on the board. It's Riley Smith with his 3rd goal of the playoffs already in just a game and a few minutes. So Riley Smith having himself a playoff. Assists go to Bjugstad and Huberdeau. Smith picking up the rebound on Bjugstad's shot. Pockets it. It's 1-0 Panthers. The game was really back and forth after the goal, like both teams coming up with their chances. The one aspect of the game where I thought the Panthers were really in control was in the face-off circle, 60% plus, and that trend continued for the majority of the game. So when you're winning 3 out of every 5 face-offs, it means good things for your team. The Islanders start pressing early in the second period. Luongo standing very, very tall. Luongo had himself a heck of a game, heck of a bounce-back game, after I personally challenged him to be better, and I will take credit for that. Thank you very much. But Florida doubles their lead early in the second, 6 minutes and 17 seconds into the second period. Nick Bjugstad this time gets his goal, his first of the playoffs. Smith and Kulikov pick up the assists there. Bukestad making the play from behind the net. He tucks it in, and it is now 2-0 Florida. The Isles, to their credit, after both of these goals, they don't let themselves get down. They don't let themselves get behind. They push back again. Luongo standing tall again. What a save he makes on Ryan Strome. It's a blocker save, I believe it was, but he just kicked the leg out, got the blocker down. Unbelievable save. It was one of the plays of the day on SportsCenter. A great save to keep this game 2-0. It's a big scrum in the last 2 minutes of the second period. 7 penalties given out on the same play. 4 of them ended up going to the Islanders, and I will just say, yes, physicality does tend to breed offense, but you've also got to play it smart. You got to kind of stay out of these big scrums that really probably aren't going to amount to a whole heck of a lot, especially if you're the Islanders and you're trying to stay in this series on enemy ice. The third period begins much the same way as the second period ended. Very physically, 8 hits thrown in the first 4 minutes of this third period. These teams are going at each other, and the Islanders at this point are throwing everything towards the net, just desperate for a bounce, a bad bump, get a skate on it, get a stick on it, whatever they need to do, desperate to cut this lead. Huge save by Greiss. We're going towards the end of the third period now. 6 minutes left. Another big save by Greiss. Could potentially be a game saver if the Islanders can come back here. He makes a big save. He gets pulled with 4 minutes left in the third period. It ends up working out. 16:27 of the third. The Islanders get on the board. John Tavares with his second of the playoffs. Assists go to Nick Leddy and Kyle Okposo. Leddy with the shot from the point, and Tavares just tips it in. The shot intentionally missing the net. Tavares banks it in off the rebound off the board, 6-on-5. We are a 2-1 hockey game. This game is close. They bring Thomas Greiss back in for a couple of minutes. They pull him for a second time to get the 6-on-5. The Islanders are pressuring hard with the John Tavares line. It does not work out the second time. 19:50 into the third period, just 10 seconds left in the game. Florida with the empty netter. Dmitry Kulikov puts it down ice and puts it in the net. Barkov with the assist there. And that is your insurance goal. The Rats fly down, and that is it. Florida beats the Islanders on home ice to tie this series up at 1, heading to the island. We're going to move on now to a game that I guess is being considered somewhat controversial by some people, especially in one team's fan base. Chicago in St. Louis taking on the Blues in Game 2 of their series. Blues with a 1-0 lead in that series. Chicago wins Game 2 3-2, despite being outshot 31-29 by the Blues. No surprise here, starting this game, another scoreless first period. The two teams combined for 26 hits and just 9 shots. It's notable that 7 of those 9 shots came from the Blues, so they did really control the first period of this game. But again, no surprise that the first period went scoreless, given that Game 1 ended 1-0 in overtime. Corey Crawford was definitely the busier of the two goaltenders in the first period and heading into the second. Couple of really solid saves to keep the game scoreless. He really kept Chicago in it, especially in that first. The Blackhawks begin their push in the middle of the second, kind of back and forth chances, big stops on both sides. St. Louis finally breaks this deadlock though. 15:20 into the second period, Vladimir Tarasenko, the Tarasen show if you will, scores his first goal of these playoffs. Assists go to Schwartz and Laterra. They just fed Tarasenko in the slot and let him do his thing. That's exactly what happens. Tarasenko puts the Blues on the board and they're up 1-0. As we mentioned in yesterday's show, this was the return of Duncan Keith from his suspension. He missed Game 1 to end off the suspension. Duncan Keith back. Major Blackhawks pushback in the last 4 minutes of this second period. Pushing to tie the game, and wouldn't you know it, last year's Conn Smythe Trophy winner does it again. 19:55, just 5 seconds left in the second period, Chicago ties the game. Taves wins the faceoff to Kane. Kane puts it back to Keith on the point. Keith blasts it home with 5 seconds left. We have a tie game heading into what's going to be a very exciting third period. Blackhawks once again come out in the third period with fire. Brian Elliott has to make a few really big saves early in the third period to keep this thing tied. Andrew Ladd and Robbie Fabry get offsetting penalties later on in the third period. Ladd with a cross-check on Fabry, and Fabry also gets dinged for an embellishment call, which I know St. Louis did not like, but that would not be the last thing in this game that St. Louis would have a problem with. Another coach's challenge reverses a goal. Jori Lehtera offside on what would have been Vladimir Tarasenko's second goal of the game to give the Blues the lead. He was determined to be just a millimeter offside just before, and it was another one of those plays where the second skate is up off the ice. So if it's not touching the ice, they got to judge based on where the first skate is relative to the puck. And it was one of those things. I mean, it was the right call. It took a while to get there, but it was the right call. So Tarasenko loses his goal and then prompts himself to take a slashing penalty with 6 minutes left in the third period, which is not something that you can do against a team like Chicago. He doth protest, but I think it was the right call too. I mean, he slashed the stick. He did it, and he got called for it, and then he got mad and tried to pull like a PK Subban argument with the referee, waving his arms in the air, but to no avail. Tarasenko takes the penalty, and just like that, 15:41 into the third period, on the power play, it's Andrew Shaw with his first goal of these playoffs. Assists go to Seabrook and Kane. That's Kane's second point of the game. Shaw just crashing the net. Looks like he's pushing Elliott into the net because the St. Louis does end up challenging this. Well, first they had to go and review it to make sure that the puck actually went in off of Shaw's stick, and they determined that it did. And then Hitchcock immediately turns around and challenges it for goaltender interference. And it sure looks like it's goaltender interference, but Shaw is also being shoved into the net by a St. Louis player. So they challenge for goalie interference. The goal is upheld. I'm 50-50 on this call. I understand why it was upheld. I understand the argument on the other side of it. At the end of the day, the referees determine that that's a good hockey goal because Shaw's being pushed in. Yeah, it impeded Elliott's opportunity to make the save, but it's one of those 50-50 sort of calls. This is why being a referee in professional sports is one of the hardest roles that you can have in the context of your job. You know what I mean? Like, in the context of the world of sports, it's, I would say, much harder to be a referee than it is to be a player, because you're facing scrutiny from every player on both teams at all times. So I would argue that it's more difficult being a referee than being a player. That's just me. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with that. What do you guys think? What do you think's more difficult, being a player or being a referee? In any case, Chicago's now taken the lead. St. Albert, Alberta's own Colton Parayko, what a chance, whiffs on a wide open net. That was a great chance to tie the game. The Blues pull Elliott soon after that. Doesn't work out for him. 18:34 into the third period. Chicago with the empty netter. Duncan Keith sends it down ice. It's tipped by Artemi Panarin, and the puck winds up in the net. Panarin gets credit for his first ever NHL playoff goal. Duncan Keith picks up the assist, his second point of the game. Now it's 3-1. I was about to say 4-2, but now it's 3-1. The game's basically over. Whoa! There's Kevin Shattenkirk. Kevin Shattenkirk blasts home a goal at 19:59 in the last second of the third period. Shattenkirk with his first of the playoffs from David Backes. Backes wins the faceoff back, and Shattenkirk just wrists it home. So, unfortunately, ended up being too little too late because of the empty net goal. Artemi Panarin's first ever NHL playoff goal winds up being the game winner as Chicago takes it 3-2. Now, we're going to come back to a couple of things about this game in just a minute, but let's talk about Nashville at Anaheim first. Game 1 of that series. They're the final series to get kicked off here. Game 1, Nashville wins this game 3-2 on Anaheim's home ice. Definitely a surprise for a lot of people who have picked Anaheim to kind of cruise through this series. Nashville outshooting Anaheim 33-29. So we're going to get going here, first minute of the first game, kind of get the feet under him. Hi, James Neal. It's 1-0 Nashville. 35 seconds into the first period. James Neal, unassisted after a bad clearing attempt from Anaheim. He just picks it up, says thank you very much, pockets it behind John Gibson, 1-0 Nashville. The Preds silencing the Anaheim crowd with an immediate goal in the first minute of the first. The Ducks start applying physical pressure, and actually they do mostly control the early play in this game. It's starting to look a lot more like people thought this series might go. Anaheim, I felt, was very clearly in control early on in this game. Simone Dupré takes a high sticking penalty midway through the first period. You kind of feel like, okay, maybe this might be a bit of a turn back here. Like there's Nashville's got a great chance here on the power play to go up 2-0. No damage happens. Anaheim's top-ranked penalty kill bails them out. The Preds, however, get into some penalty trouble of their own. They take two really quick penalties within about 30 seconds to a minute of each other. They go down on the 5-on-3, and you can't do that against the Anaheim team. 17:39 into the first period on the power play. Ryan Getzlaf from Fowler and Perry. Getzlaf picks up Fowler's rebound. Boom, it's in the net. The game is tied 1-1. And I just want to take a second to make a comment on the Philip Forsberg hit on Manson, I believe it was, where Manson was down for a little bit. I believe he left the game and did not return. It looked like a hit to the head to me. Like watching it at the time, and I've watched a couple of replays, and it looks to me like a hit to the head. I don't know whether it was. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the primary point of contact was the shoulder. I'm not sure. All I'm saying is it looked like a hit to the head to me. And that's one of those plays where, like, it's middle of the ice. The guy's got his head down. I understand you can't have your head down like that. But, like, I don't know. That's one of those hits that just makes me cringe every time I see it. Again, looked like a hit to the head to me. Maybe it wasn't. I'm not an expert. The Ducks come out flying to begin the second period. No pun intended, but bump. And they pay back that first minute of the first period James Neal goal with a first goal of the second period in the first minute for Anaheim. 48 seconds into the second period, Ryan Kesler in transition, wrists it home. Cogliano and Lindholm with the assists there. Kesler looked like a bit of a Mike Camilleri-style gangster on that play. Great shot. Ryan Kesler puts Anaheim up 2-1. Little later in the period, John Gibson comes up with a big stop on a basically point-blank Shea Weber slap shot, which is like the worst thing you can possibly see as a goaltender. You see the puck going towards him, and you're just like, oh no. But he gets in the way. He looks like he got a little hurt on that one. Like, he definitely felt that one from Shea Weber, which, I mean, how could you not? To me, John Gibson looked a little bit nervous at times in net. He looked like he was flopping, flying around a little bit here. Just felt uneasy to me watching him. I mean, obviously, he may not have been, who knows. But to me, he felt uneasy between the pipes, and maybe that might have played a little bit into what would come later. The Preds kick up the tempo here midway through the second period, finding a way to equalize. 7 minutes and 55 seconds into the second period. Nashville ties the game. Wilson with a weird little tip. Like, it's just thrown in front of the net by Ellis, and Wilson just kind of bats his stick at it, like kind of waves his stick at it, and he tips it, and somehow it goes in. And that kind of leads into the whole, I feel like John Gibson was playing nervous in this game, because you'd think a play like that, 99 times out of 100, he's going to stop it. So it was just kind of a weird goal, but I mean, hey, game's tied. And not only does Ellis set up the game-tying goal, he then prevents an Anaheim go-ahead goal with his backside. He kind of slides into the crease with Rinne. The puck hits him, even though like the net almost looks like it's wide open. Like, get the puck up a little bit, and Anaheim takes the lead. Doesn't happen. It hits Ellis, in the butt, and Ellis just kind of covers it up. And it's funny because you can see Rinne kind of jumps on him, and from the net cam you can just look at Ellis, and he's like, "Oh my God, please get off me! You're so heavy." And I think that's why he covered up the net cam, because I think he was like, oh, everyone in the world is just seeing my pain. So he covers up the net cam. Just kind of one of those funny hockey things, I guess. But Ellis makes a great play to prevent Anaheim from taking the lead. In the third period, the Preds start ramping up their physicality. They're getting down. They're blocking Anaheim shots. Anaheim is going to get a lot of chances. They're going to send a lot of pucks towards the net. So Nashville picking up their shot blocking in the third. And again, physical play and solid defense leads to offense on the other end. 10 minutes and 25 seconds into the third period, we got a Nashville goal to put them up 3-2. Philip Forsberg gets the goal unassisted. In transition, he's trying to send the puck across, and it banks in off of an Anaheim defender. It's in behind John Gibson. Once again, one of those plays that you'd like John Gibson to have. Didn't happen. Forsberg credited with the goal. I told you it was going to be a difference maker, guys. Forsberg with the goal. Nashville is up 3-2. It's really starting to look like Anaheim's going to tie this game, though. Huge pushback. Bit of a back and forth, but Anaheim starts a really big pushback. Sami Vatanen takes a momentum-killing delay of game penalty for the Ducks, but Pekka Rinne still has to make a stop on Ryan Getzlaf with 1 second left in the third period. Had that shot gone in, I think it would have counted. Rinne makes the stop on Getzlaf, preserves the win. Nashville goes into Anaheim, wins game 1 to take a 1-0 series lead. As I said a little bit ago, we're just going to go back and talk about a couple of things from the Chicago and St. Louis game, or some things that came out of the Chicago-St. Louis game. First of all, I don't think I had mentioned it when I was talking about it, but that series now tied up at 1, heading to Chicago. The Blackhawks have to feel pretty good about that. After the game, St. Louis coach Ken Hitchcock giving an interview about the officiating and about a couple of the calls, and sports media, time to talk about sports media again, guys. Big smile, everybody's happy. Sports media has kind of taken Hitchcock's comments and I think taken them a little bit out of context, where he's taking them in the context of he's complaining about the officiating. I didn't read his comments as if he's complaining about the officiating at all. Basically, what he said was, in a series, like, not all of the calls are going to go our way. I don't think he was complaining about the officiating. He was actually being quite realistic about it, because that's the way it goes. You're not going to get every call going your way. If you did, I get the feeling you're paying the referees. So basically, I think he was just pointing out and reiterating, I mean, really what we already know is that you're not going to get all the calls. Sometimes calls are going to go against you. And he literally said, big deal, we have to find a way to win. He's like, Chicago's a really good team. They know a lot about winning. And they need to be better. They need to find ways to overcome these situations where not every call is going to go their way. I don't read that as Ken Hitchcock complaining about the officiating. How did you guys take it? Did you take it as though he's like, oh, these officials, oh, these stupid calls? It's perfectly fine to disagree with the calls. In my opinion, Ken Hitchcock was just saying what we already know and saying that, yeah, not every call is going to go our way, but we still need to figure out ways to win, whether the calls go our way or don't go our way. So that's all that I read it. How did you guys read Ken Hitchcock's post-game comments? And we had another long series of video review, and it happened twice in the Chicago-St. Louis game. First for the Tarasenko goal, which was called back for the offside, and then, of course, for the Shaw goal, which was eventually upheld after 10-plus minutes of review. I get it. For everybody that is upset about this stuff, I get it. Hockey is the fastest game. And we've kind of taken it now and taken it to a point where there are going to be several parts, probably in every game, because why would you not challenge, to slow the game down? And I get that, and I can get why that can be frustrating. I always err on the side of I would rather have the call be right than have the call be wrong for the sake of the pace of the game. If it takes 10 minutes to get a call right, I would rather the call be right. That's just me. How do you guys feel about the video review and in situations like that where the game is literally stopped for 10 minutes to figure out whether a goal counts or not? Is that too intrusive for you guys? Are you okay with it? Me personally, I'm okay with it, but I'm interested to hear from you. How do you guys feel about the video review? And how did you feel about Ken Hitchcock's post-game comments? Of note, yesterday it came out that Philadelphia Flyers center Sean Couturier is going to be out for 2 weeks with an upper body injury after the hit from Alex Ovechkin. Looked like a clean hit to me. I think it was just one of those hockey plays, and it's kind of unfortunate that Couturier ended up injured off of it. He's going to be out for at least 2 weeks. And a bit of a fun fact here, useless NHL trivia. This was the first time in NHL history that both Florida teams won a playoff game on the same day. Do with that what you will. All right, kids, let's tee up tonight's games for you. We're going to start, there are 4 games on the schedule tonight. Actually, a 3 p.m. Eastern game, so a bit of a late afternoon game for you. The Rangers in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. That series is 1-0 Pittsburgh. The game begins at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's available on CBC in Canada and on NBC in the United States. Your likely goaltending matchup is who the hell knows. Lundqvist is still a game-time decision. Marc-Andre Fleury is a game-time decision, although Fleury came out and said he doesn't expect to play in Game 2. He hopes he will, but he doesn't expect to. So I would imagine Jeff Zatkoff probably gets his second playoff start. But in terms of who's going to play for the Rangers, we have no idea. It could be Lundqvist. It could be Antti Raanta. One that we do know will not be playing in this game is Rangers defenseman Dan Girardi. He is out for Game 2 officially. On Pittsburgh's side of the puck, Evgeny Malkin seems to be trending towards a return. He's still questionable. I guess a game-time decision technically for Game 2. We could see Malkin back. A lot of people on Twitter are saying, like, hey, maybe he shouldn't play until the Penguins actually lose a game. That's probably the way that I would go with it too. I mean, you're up 1-0 in the series. Even if the Rangers happen to tie it in Game 2, you can still send him out for Game 3, give him a couple more days rest, make sure that he's as close to 100% as possible before you throw him out there on the ice against a team like the Rangers, who will certainly play him physically, knowing that he's probably not 100%. So if it was me, I wouldn't be playing Malkin, but it seems like he could be trending towards a return, possible to play in Game 2. I also saw kind of an interesting opinion piece here, sort of floating around Twitter a little bit, talking about how the Rangers' window for success, for winning a championship, that their window may be closing or may already be closed. How do you guys feel about that idea, that maybe the Rangers have peaked and their chances to win a cup are much lower now than they had been over the previous couple of seasons? Weigh in on that. Let me know how you feel about that. I'm not sure. I mean, this Rangers team is still a really good team, and that's still Henrik Lundqvist back there. I know I've been a little bit critical of him in some previous episodes where I kind of felt like, especially lately, he hasn't been playing up to form, and I think that's still true, but I don't know whether that means that their window is closed or not. That might be a big step for me, but what do you guys think? How do you feel about the Rangers' possibilities for winning a cup either this year or in the next couple of years? Is that window still open, or is that window closed? As far as a prediction goes for tonight's game, assuming that Fleury doesn't play, these are my assumptions. Fleury doesn't play, Lundqvist doesn't play, Malkin doesn't play. That's the way that I'm building this game in my head. So based on that, my prediction, I still like Pittsburgh to win this thing. I think they take both games on home ice. I think this could very well end up being a bit of a home ice series. I like Pittsburgh to win tonight. I'm going to give it to him 3-2, and let's get greedy and say that it's going to go to overtime. Penguins beat the Rangers 3-2 in overtime. Second game of the night, the Flyers and Capitals will renew hostilities in Washington. Washington won Game 1 to take a 1-0 series lead. This game begins 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's available on CBC in Canada and CNBC in the United States. Your likely goaltending matchup, one more time, we're going to see Steve Mason take on Braden Holtby because both goaltenders played very well in Game 1. Evgeny Kuznetsov, I think, was the player that stood out for me the most for Washington in Game 1. 7 shots on goal, 7 shots on Steve Mason. He had nothing to show for it, didn't score, but 7 shots, I mean, this guy is dangerous, and the Capitals have so many weapons, it almost becomes impossible to cover them all. especially if you're like Philadelphia and you're not a fantastic defensive team. Like, I think there are some defensive teams in the NHL that can stand up very well to the Capitals in a 7-game series. I'm not 100% sure that Philadelphia is that team. I love their physicality, I love their forecheck, and I'm still giving them a chance in this series, but Kuznetsov is the guy that I'm keeping my eye on. I think if he gets half the shots that he got in Game 1, he's going to find the back of the net, so keep an eye on Kuznetsov. Also of note, with the injury to Sean Couturier, it looks like Brayden Schenn is going to move over from the wing to fill that second line center role. Schenn actually played all 3 forward positions at various points this season, ended up with career highs in goals and points. So Brayden Schenn is a player to look out for the Flyers, moving over into that second line center role. I don't think I saw much of anything in Game 1 that would lead me to believe that Philadelphia is really going to beat Washington in Game 2, like on Washington's home ice. I still like the Capitals here. I like the Caps to win this game. I think it's still going to be close. Again, Philly's more than competitive here. I think it's going to be close. I like Washington to win this game 2-1. We'll keep it in regulation because we don't want to get greedy. Washington beats Philly 2-1 to take a 2-0 series lead. Let's go to Texas for Game 2 between Minnesota and Dallas. That game begins at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That series is 1-0 Dallas after their 4-0 Game 1 win. This game is available on Sportsnet in Canada, as well as Fox Sports and NBCSN in the United States. Your goaltending matchup is likely to be Devan Dubnyk one more time for Minnesota, taking on likely Kari Lehtonen, because how do you take Kari Lehtonen out after he posts a shutout in Game 1? Devan Dubnyk was not bad in Game 1. I mean, the 4-0 score is kind of misleading. He wasn't bad. He stopped 28 of 31, but I think he needs to be even better than that. And I think everybody on the Wild needs to be a little bit better. You look at a guy like Charlie Coyle, no shots on goal in Game 1. You look at Mikko Koivu, the guy that is their leading scorer, 1 shot on goal. And they need to be more disciplined. You can't give the Stars 6 power play opportunities like they gave them in Game 1 and expect the game to be competitive. Devan Dubnyk, here's a nice little stat for you. Devan Dubnyk in Game 1 faced more shots on the Dallas power play than he did when the game was 5-on-5. That is unacceptable. Like, you can't leave your goaltender out to dry like that by giving one of the best offensive teams, actually the best offensive team in the league, 6 power play opportunities. That's just, you're not going to win a single game that way, much less be anywhere near competitive in a series. Of note for Dallas, Tyler Seguin could be ready to return to the lineup. This is one of those Evgeny Malkin things. Why would you bother rushing him back? Like, why bother? This is not a series that I think Dallas is in any danger of losing, certainly not at this point. I would leave him out. I would see how Game 2 went. If, for some reason, Minnesota won Game 2, maybe you bring Seguin back for Game 3. I don't see any reason to put him out on the ice now, other than the fact that it's in front of the home crowd and maybe it would be a nice boost, I guess. But if it was me, I'd be leaving Seguin out of the lineup, but he may be ready to return. And there's guys on the Dallas roster that are kind of looking to rebound from some fairly poor performances actually in Game 1. We're looking at like Patrick Sharp, who did not record a shot. Valery Nichushkin, who only recorded 1 shot. So these are guys that you should be looking out for on Dallas's side to try to rebound from down games in Game 1. I kind of buried the lead there and kind of gave away what my prediction was. I like Dallas here. I think this game's going to be slightly more competitive than Game 1 was, but I still like Dallas to probably put up 3 or 4 goals. I like Dallas to win this game, let's say it 4-2. So I'm going to say Dallas takes a 2-0 series lead heading to Minnesota. And the late game tonight sees Game 2 between the San Jose Sharks and the Los Angeles Kings. San Jose with a somewhat surprising 4-3 victory in Game 1 to take a 1-0 series lead. This game begins at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's available on CBC in Canada, as well as Fox Sports and NBCSN in the United States. Your likely goaltending matchup here, likely to be the same as it was in Game 1. Martin Jones taking on, well, obviously, Jonathan Quick for the Kings. Also for the Kings, defenseman Alec Martinez, who famously scored the Stanley Cup winning goal a couple of years back, is going to be a game time decision here for Game 2. It's likely that he won't play at this point, I would say. Martinez blocked a shot and left Game 1 early, did not return. I would say it's probably more likely that he's not going to play. Of note here, I don't think the Sharks can expect to score 3 or more goals on Jonathan Quick, maybe again in this series. Jonathan Quick is not a guy that likes losing. He's not a guy that likes giving up goals. He's very animated. So I think a game like Game 1 is just an intrinsic motivator for a guy like Jonathan Quick. So I would expect that this is going to be a much more difficult game for Dallas. And I wouldn't expect 3 goals on Quick is probably going to be a pipe dream, especially for Game 2, which means the Sharks really need to shore up defensively. The quality of chances that the Kings had in Game 1, a little too high for my liking. I think if that repeats itself, the Kings have a great chance of winning this game. However, the Kings will nullify their great chance of winning that game if they give away the puck the way they did in Game 1. 20 giveaways. Holy crap. Especially for a Suter-coached team, Sutter-coached team, whatever, Sutter, Suter, tomato, tomato, potato, potato. For a guy like him, a coach like that had to be so frustrating. 20 giveaways. That is not reflective of this Kings team at all. They're much better with the puck than that. But 20 giveaways. If you can't protect the puck, you can't win. So that's going to be a big sticking point, I would imagine, for Sutter and for this team, for this coaching staff. I'm sure they worked on it. The Kings have to at least cut that number in half, you would think. If they do that, I think they got a great chance. I like a split here on the Kings home ice. I think the Kings do win Game 2 tonight. I think it's going to be low scoring, tight game. I like the Kings 2-1 to beat San Jose. Okay, folks, that is going to do it for the Saturday, April 16th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. Just as a reminder, in the comments section, please tell me about Ken Hitchcock's post-game comments, how you took them, what you think he meant. Tell me about the video review and the length of time, whether you're liking it, whether it's taking you out of the game, things like that. General comments on the podcast. I am loving all of the feedback. I'm loving the success, loving the views. You guys are doing awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate every comment, every view. It really means a lot to me. That's it for me. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Enjoy the games tonight. I got 3 of the 4 teams to take a 2-0 series lead. I have the Kings to tie up that series with the Sharks. How do you think the games are going to go tonight? We'll see you tomorrow.